Well, today's topic is one of my favorites, not because we're talking about female erectile dysfunction, but because of the potential that is there when we have proper female erectile function.
I also want to say this is our 50th episode, which is super cool because we just decided to do this podcast a while back, and we've been putting it together, and it's just unfolding, and it's still going, and people are loving it, and we're rising up on the charts of popularity, which is super cool.
So shout out to you, Rebecca, for recommending it.
And thank you for all of you for watching and enjoying and commenting and asking for more. But yeah, so today's number 50. So
incredible.
That's cool. Most podcasts don't make it past 12, I heard. So we're doing all right. So tell me a little bit more. From what I understood, female erectile dysfunction isn't an actual term.
That's true.
And so why are you or we choosing to use that term?
Well, because I've consistently seen with clients, I've consistently seen in popular sex therapy, sex advice, sex coaching, that they are promoting a particular way of stimulating the female genitalia that doesn't lead to its full erectile function. In other words, that women have erections as well, and the way that I see things being promoted is very much similar if you're only to stimulate one part of the penis.
I think for me, I also brought in the distinction a little because the way in which suction sex works, the way in which the type of jade egg practice that I teach, like the way we're actually both working with bodies, our own bodies, and helping with clients, is that we're concerned around erectile tissue itself. And females have so much erectile tissue. A lot of it is internal, and a lot of it doesn't get activated. So it's really surprising for people when they actually see the visual of a fully engorged vulva, so that the outer lips are engorged, there's a little engorgement in the perineal area, and then there's a whole bunch of engorgement we're not even seeing, like the clitoral legs, the urethral sponge, the perineal sponge, and I'm sure there's even other zones of engorgement in there.
Well, then particularly then when women have the opportunity to feel themselves in full engorgement, the way that they walk through the world, the amount of actual blood flow and weight that is there, the amount of lubrication that they have naturally, and all of a sudden a lot of myths just get completely busted around, well, I just don't have desire, I don't feel very much, it's always painful, I just don't get wet, or I'm in menopause and therefore I'm dried up, and so there's just nothing really to be done. Tried different types of steroid creams and different types of vibrators, and nothing seems to be there, so I'm just completely disinterested in sex. And then all of a sudden they start to interact with their vulva in a completely different way, and there's just such drastic changes in results. So
I agree. So one of the things that I noticed, and we discussed this before we were on the camera rolling, was that with males, the male body, there's a very clear, distinct erectile dysfunction. We solve it with this medicine or pelvic floor therapy, or whatever, or even sometimes surgeries. So it's a very distinct category. But we don't have a female erectile dysfunction as a thing. And then a lot of the quote unquote dysfunctions for females is often related to it's all in your head, which you hear doctors, even in this day and age, say a lot, occasionally even a therapist, but that's why they're supposed to be there and doing the talk therapy. And what I have found that, yes, there's an element that is in our head. We are engaged with our minds. Sexuality is something we don't just leave our brains behind for. Like we're there, we're thinking, we're feeling, we're exploring, we're having fantasies. So whatever we're believing, all of those things have huge impact on whether we have blood flow or no blood flow. And so I'd love to start to unpack a little bit more. Why is this really important, and what should we do about it?
Well, if you look up the term, take a Google search, why is there no term female erectile dysfunction? I guarantee you what you're going to find out is that the answer is going to come back that, well, That's because with men, there's very clear signs of an erectile dysfunction, but with women, it's more complicated than that.
I think though
Meaning that there's multiple reasons.
Sure, but with my colleague Dr. Wickman, we did do an experiment recently with volunteers where a woman had the blood flow to her clitoris measured, and then there was a practice of arousal, and then once that arousal practice happened, she came back and was measured again by Dr. Wickman, who's an OBGYN. And the increase in blood flow was phenomenal, just from a woman understanding how to breathe properly into her pelvis, how to move properly, and even we used in some cases, I suppose, sound, which actually, when you use vibration, it vibrates that vagus nerve and tells the system, I'm here, I'm relaxed, I'm having a great time, versus this is not a good idea.
But then also the ability to stimulate in a different way than most women are being taught. And this encouraged the blood flow, and as opposed to, I think the kind of average pills that women can take, which is like a Cialis or a Viagra or something like that, was around like 60-80% blood flow increase. This was 250-300% increase.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And it was something that we found with every person. It wasn't like one or two people.
Yeah.
Now, what was interesting, I actually also got measured, and there was no difference really in the blood flow before and after. And I was really disappointed. I'm like, wait, what? But the doctor came back and she said, no, that's because you consistently have blood flow in this area, not just having it in moments of sexual arousal. You breathe and move in such a way that there's constant blood flow through your genitals, and that's a really great thing.
Well, what was interesting too is some of the women got measured again later, some days after then having engaged in this form of stimulation, and their blood flow still maintained a higher rate as well.
A few days later. Yeah.
This again is just showing that yes, there are general things that happen in life. It could be, and this is what you see with female sexual dysfunction, is it could be pelvic floor tension, there can be hormonal issues, there can be low libido, low desire, that you're just not mentally
there's
aroused. There's pain.
Yeah.
There's an inability to have an orgasm, but just understanding how the anatomical structure works as a system of pleasure and the biomechanics of the body working together in a way that naturally will allow for the blood to flow is going to have an effect. And of course, it's a holistic thing, but if we are completely ignoring this one portion, then everything else has to actually compensate for that. And when we bring this bit of education on, everything's working. It would be like saying that guys have low desire, but then you find out, the guy's cock is, tied backwards and tucked between his butt cheeks. Well, of course, then he's not going to be enjoying getting an erection or even getting into a fully erect place because, his body's in a certain posture that doesn't allow for that blood flow to happen. And it's not as extreme as that inside the female body, but it's not too far from it.
Well, I really thought it was interesting. We heard another podcast recently, and I thought the OBGYN on that podcast was really great. She's so pro female pleasure, and she really had some beautiful. She's just very female pleasure pro. Just really wanted, just wanted to educate people. And that said, her orientation, because she is a medical doctor, is still within the reproductive faculty of the genitals. And so I'd love us just for a moment, there is a really big difference. And so the key thing that we keep hearing as a solution to this issue is more lube, more lube, more lube, more lube. This is like across the board. And then, yes, get a vibrator. So what I have found though with my clients is those are superficial solutions. They're actually not, it's a bit like, I don't know, something's wrong in the car, but you just put some wax and make the car look shiny as, okay, now the car's better, but you actually didn't address the mechanical aspect deeper within the car. And not that I'm saying female genitals are like a car, but just that we are superficially addressing the issue. And what I have found is if women yes, okay, I want them to have sensation. So if they've been blocked from any sensation, having a vibrator kind of like burst sensation online, that's okay, great. But then what do you do after that to keep deepening and expanding and exploring sensation? This is super important.
Will be this similar to, I mean, you men out there, some of you would enjoy having a vibrator placed on the head of your penis, but if that's the only place that you are getting stimulated, then you might go, well, that's not the full extent of the
What's
kind
possible.
of erection that I could have.
Yeah.
And then even if you started to go a little bit deeper, like kind of towards the shaft and to hold it there, like right under the head or a little bit further back or just halfway down the shaft, you would start going, well, but this isn't really stimulating me to the full capacity. So there are completely other ways to stimulate the entire CUV complex and not leaving out the cervix and womb from the equation.
I'm really excited for the more erotic portion of this podcast because I want to talk about graphically
Some of the practicalities.
well, just graphically what's actually happening in the tissue, which we can't really do in public side, sorry. But we'll get there. But for now, just what I notice is if you do prescribe a vibrator over and over again, there is tension that starts to build, and often, almost 9 out of 10 times, I believe, I don't know that if that's accurate, but a lot of the times, tension is the culprit for what's going on. And you can have like no tone and still have tension. So this is the thing that gets very confusing.
Well, I remember the OBGYN saying that there are 2 types of nerves that stimulate the clitoris. And one was pressure.
Vibration and pressure.
Vibration. And then the other one was heat and light touch.
Yeah.
And she says that the heat and the light touch is the one that fades the most quickly. And therefore then the easiest way is to go with pressure and vibration. Now, when we were also speaking to an amazing osteopath who does just wonderful work, she was saying, well, what actually is happening though is that not that there's a degradation of the heat and the light touch, but if the body starts to orient towards what sensation it can feel most easily, then it loses not the ability.
It sort of gets deaf to the other
it stops
signals.
paying attention to the more subtle ones that can then lead towards these more parasympathetic states of orgasm.
Yeah, I agree. So why are we here? What are we talking about? We're wanting to bring some education in the way that we breathe, the way that we move, the way that we touch ourselves is not addressing the full spectrum of the female erectile tissue, of which a lot of it is internal. And I am actually shocked how many women have never actually touched themselves internally. So that's something that's always quite surprising for me.
Oh, this is important too, because I do believe there is going to be, especially with the rise of the importance of menopausal issues, perimenopausal issues, women speaking of their different experiences.
Or even like a trauma through surgery or birth.
Exactly, but there starts to become this new buzzword that might even come out where people start saying, oh yes, we need to pay attention to female erections and that there is such a thing as female erectile dysfunction. However, they're just going to sell you the same prescribed vibrator, lube story, and you'll be missing your full potential of actually taking advantage of your erectile function. And this is sort of, it's just a lying dormant dragon of pleasure.
Dragon?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when women awaken this, they're just like, I mean,
powerful.
How many times have we had clients that are, 60s, 70s, 80s, and they're like, if only I'd known. Well, at least I know, though.
Yeah, exactly.
And it literally
there's the simultaneous sadness that they didn't know before and an exaltation that they're discovering it now.
I can't tell you, 100% of the time, women, when they do this, when they engage with themselves this way, they will always tell me some story where then they've gone for a walk, and they felt a weight there, and then when they sit down, it's like there's this
extra
weight there, but then also it's like almost like it suctions on to whatever it is that they're sitting on top of, and they just have so much awareness of this part of their body. And it's almost like hearing a teenage guy being like, I'm really aware of this cock swinging between my legs. And these women are like, I'm really aware of this living volcano that's between my legs and interacting with the world and giving me constant feedback, not in a way that's irritating, but a way that's actually soothing and grounding.
It makes me think we once worked with a client who was also a doctor and with female medicine. And in all of her living years, she, you can conceptually understand things academically. You can read all the papers in the world. You can read all the books in the world. You can watch all the videos in the world. But until you have a direct experience yourself, there's an element of the knowledge that just doesn't land. It's not meaningful in the same way as when you have a direct experience, which is what I like. I think it's the word gnosis. It's knowledge through direct experience. And so I remember how blown away she was that she didn't even know that the inside of the vagina could have so many sensations, and she was experiencing new flavors of orgasm that she's like, I didn't even know that was possible, because up until then, what was possible is what she and almost everyone else knows is the feeling of a direct clitorally stimulated orgasm.
I mean,
and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that there's a lot more to the landscape.
It's just that the anatomy that we've been given is based off of the medical reproductive system when it comes to genitals. So there is not a focus on pleasure. And then not really much has been brought into the realm of possibility since Masters and Johnson's, which was, very much about, hey, there's the clitoris. This can definitely bring about a lot of pleasure. Men don't need to be, the ones providing it. And it's not through penetration that women most easily reach orgasm. And this was a huge thing for women to learn about this part of their body.
Yeah.
And it also kind of was a pushback on this Freudian idea that, no, that's just the immature way of having an orgasm. But since it sort of swung that way and it was tied to ideologies and politics and everything else, now there's a hesitation, or at least a resistance towards, well, there's other ways as well of finding pleasure, and it's kind of vilified penetration as well. That's how men get off, and there's a difference between men and women in terms of how their bodies work. And I guess the one last thing I want to say is that when we work with clients, having them be able to relate their different anatomical structures gives them so much more wisdom on how to interact and touch one another, as opposed to just saying, no, men and women are different, so you just have to do it differently.
It's interesting too, because I work a lot with psychosexuality, and I'll just speak from myself. I have noticed if I'm not in right relation with myself on that day, or I'm having a little whatever, then the quality of my orgasm can diminish quite substantially. It can take a lot longer to get there. And on days where I have that alignment, I feel really connected to myself, it could take seconds with penetration then I'm already having the ecstatic experience. So there is something to say, because I know we hear a lot, it's all in your head, and there's a lot of the sexual issues for women are prescribed as more mental than physical, although there are some physical ones. But to me, they're not separate. That psychosexual self, we're an integrated being. And so when we're off in one way or another, whether you get turned off from the way that you think, or you get turned off from the way you're touching yourself or someone else is, it's a both and, right? So relearning and understanding that when I start to feel like, don't have much sensation right now, then I know I've a little bit dissociated with my body. I'm disconnected from my own heart. So in those moments, there is a practice. There is something that we actually can engage and do to bring us even more in alignment, more connected to our own hearts. And then that brings sensation back so fast. It's really quite incredible.
Well, and I found quite incredible too, is because some people go, oh no, the only type of orgasms are those that happen in the clitoris. There's, 8 to 12 contractions that are 0.8 seconds in latency between each contraction, and then that time decreases over time until stopping. But then you've had so many clients where they will say, I've started to explore another type of pleasure, and it actually scares me because it can become so intense. And they actually need to be told, hey, it's okay, go down that path and see where it leads.
Yes.
Just because a part of them goes, oh, but that's not the way it's supposed to happen.
First of all, like, I hope you're starting to understand the way that you've been brought up, the way that society holds what's true and what's not true, how we hold what's possible, not possible, actually impacts experience. And so what we're trying to do here is with this whole Embodied Love Lounge podcast is to expand what's possible, and not from a fantastical place of imagining what's possible, what's actually possible, because we've journeyed there. We've helped.
From a place of experiment, try this out in your own
We've
body.
helped people do this. It's something that, science requires that you can duplicate results in different scenarios to make something actually true. And so we've done that with all kinds of people, all walks of life, all ages, body size, backgrounds, ethnicities, faith, it doesn't matter.
So you all are the empirical evidence.
Yes. But what I have found is one of the key things when someone believes that something is broken, and most likely it's them. And especially in the phase of perimenopause, menopause, because there's a collective belief that the viability of a female goes down quite a bit once her fertility is over, then collectively there's this kind of, can be a going down of this. But this isn't actually true for everyone, and this is a highly unreported. But many women who go through this phase become even more sexual, even more orgasmic, and I think partly because they don't care anymore what they look like, what they sound like. They just really free themselves. And this is what we've discovered is when, say if you're on birth control, there's a lot of suppression of your desire. There's a lot of suppression of sensation. And say you're on that birth control for a really long time, and then all of a sudden you may decide to have babies, and then right after that you're going into perimenopause. So there's a lot going on with our bodies where we're not genuinely free to actually feel what's true. And so that's what I found with my clients and our clients, that giving permission just for a moment, okay, here's what you've experienced, here's the trauma from the surgery or the birth or the past experience, okay, here's the sensation or lack thereof that's actually happening. Here's your whole mental state where you're like, I don't care about this part of my life anymore. I know I should care, but I just don't. If I never had sex again, great. The amount of times I have heard that is incredible. And I myself have said that. I came to a point in my life where I said that. The difference between myself and a lot of the ladies, though, is I knew something was wrong. I didn't accept that as my reality forever. I was like, no, something is not right.
Yes, especially if you have prior success and then it gets taken away, then you go, there's something off. But if you never have, then you're not aware of the change.
They have discovered that low libido oftentimes is related to not having the type of sex that really lights you up, that actually makes you feel turned on, that actually makes you think about it more, desire it more, self-pleasure to the idea of it more, because you whatever the experience has been, it's so meh that at some point you're like, I'm done with meh. Like, I just rather have nothing than meh.
Because I almost always see low libido and low desire just slapped together.
Yeah.
And I mean, low libido should be, okay, there's a hormonal imbalance that can definitely be the case. That's going on. Low desire means there's not mental arousal. So just the fact that those get conflated already shows that there's an issue. And then everything even gets conflated further with just calling it, well, female sexual dysfunction. And then there's just the dynias, they'll call them, which is anything that has to do with pain. And, it just all gets lumped rather together.
And the itises too, all the inflammation.
And itises. Yeah. But the truth, though, around low desire particularly, though, is what you're saying, is that if you've had a bad experience over and over again, then it makes sense that you're just not going to like that. What I've noticed consistently, especially when it comes to orgasm, but if I were to go through sort of all the different clients, and I could say the same thing about pleasure, is that there's mainly 4 reasons why people, but in this case particularly women, struggle with reaching orgasm or frankly just pleasure. One is an issue, what we just spoke about, is definition. It needs to be this way. If it doesn't feel that way, then I don't
If it doesn't fit in this box, then I'm not having it.
Precisely. 2, what we've spoken about as well, the mechanics of it, how we are physically interacting with the body. Some people would call this techniques, but there's more to it than just a technique. Then thirdly is something to do with needing the right kind of emotional connection. So if one isn't activated emotionally, it's what you're speaking about, with the heart being available, because some of these things really open us up intimately in a way that can make us feel vulnerable. And so to just share that with anybody or even ourselves can be so intimate that can literally be scary.
Exactly.
And then the 4th one is that if there is a need for some resensitization, in that we've always paid attention to a very particular type of stimulation, then we will be inclined to that. But when you listen to these 4 things, you can see how it's really about a synergy, because all of them can work together and need to work together.
I find it so exquisitely beautiful when a woman takes a deep breath and goes, okay, you mean to tell me that if I learn to breathe differently, if I learn to move differently, if I learn to activate my voice, if I learn to give myself permission in a very deep way, that I could actually start having the sex that I actually would enjoy? Yes. And so when we get to that point in the conversation, it's such a beautiful moment, because you can see a tiny spark of light.
Because they finally have agency.
Yes.
They finally have some empowerment that they can bring pleasure into the experience that's actually independent of their partner.
What's interesting, because I speak a lot to perimenopause, menopause communities, is that one of the big things that's thrown at women is testosterone creams. And for some, it doesn't work, so they really then believe something's broken inside.
Yes.
And it's absolutely not true. It's just that for some people, that's not the solution for them. They actually need something else. Something else is going on that's being left unaddressed. So it doesn't matter what kind of creams or pills you throw at it, it's not going to work.
Using the metaphor I did beforehand, I mean, if you can pump a guy full of testosterone, you can stimulate them all in all the ways that you want to, but if their penis is tied backwards, then it's simply not going to give them the full effect. Or if you just limit to touching only to one little area in one particular way, as opposed to actually stimulating the entire penis. In fact, we've been seeing even with guys that there's an entire third of their penis that's internal in their body. And when they then start to learn how to relieve the tension and actually bring
activate that part.
Sensation and activate that area, all of a sudden they're like, whoa, I'm having erections like I did when I was, a teenager. And that's not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So this way of interacting with our body as a system of pleasure, again, is a needed shift that we want to invite all of you into, and exactly what we're going to be going into in this next portion of the podcast.
Yes. So if you don't know that we have an explicit portion in that we talk a lot more graphically, we do go into how to do certain things. We share more graphic stories. There's also an erotic audio that we record where we enact the topic, and just so you can get a feel and a transmission of what that is. And also when you join that membership, there's many other amazing things that open up for you to access in the Embodied Love University. So
without further ado, let's jump on over.
All right.
To join us for the complete and explicit version of the podcast, simply upgrade your membership and gain instant access.